It's not my job to create messaging. My job is to reveal what's awesome, that's already awesome about the culture and the company, and highlight that in a authentic, distinct way.
There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO. I am your main man, Chris Mechanic, here with a really exciting guest, a dynamic and data-driven, award-winning marketing exec with both public and pre-IPO experience in the hyper B2B growth space. For more than 20 years, he's been developing brands, integrated marketing programs, and positioning to really drive business outcome. And this is the type of guest that we really love having on this show because he's like this great mixture of analytics, data, tech driven mindset, and also an amazing storyteller. And guys, like the resume, you wouldn't believe. Spent 4 years at Salesforce as head of digital marketing. He was at AppDynamics as the chief digital and creative officer, then to Five9 as the chief marketing officer and Logic Monitor, and then now is chief marketing officer at Egnyte, which is a really interesting company in the content governance space. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, welcome to the show, Mr. Ryan Kam. How are
Thank
you?
you. I'm doing well. Thanks, Chris. What a great introduction. Uh, Thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's great to be
Well,
on the show.
absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm super excited to dive into it with you. I think this is going to be an amazing episode. Um, you know how we like to start. We like to lead with the value. Why don't you go ahead and share with everyone listening, like, what is one of your biggest secrets to success?
Yeah, I'm not going to bury the headline. I think one of the biggest secrets you mentioned in the intro, and it's the passion for not only storytelling, but the data. And those are like intertwined at the hip. And I like to call it calculated creativity, right?
I love that.
Yeah, it's look, being a marketer, you can't get away from being data driven, right? And I think it's super critical to know every data point that you could possibly get, but it's also knowing that data can only take you so far, right?
Yeah.
To bend the knee in the curve, to get to another level of growth, you have to take some risks, and that's where you need to have the data as a foundation, but you also have to be open to creativity and have both your analysts and your strategy work with your creatives to create something net new that's never been seen before, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I like to have this idea of calculative creativity so that, as people, humans, obviously we're really born for pattern recognition. And the thing that gets noticed the most is breaking that pattern. So
Yes.
again, it seems very common sense to have those, but it's a rare skill to find. Usually, I find marketers are really, focused on just the data, which can blind you, or just the creativity, which is just art. So
Right.
it's the blend of the two that are really important.
Yeah. And so when you're sitting in a seat as CMO and you're thinking about taking a swing or, engaging in some of this calculated creativity as you call it, like what is your mental framework for it? Like, do you have a framework of, it should be X% iterative things that, we work or that we know work and it's an iteration versus Y% of like calculated big swings, or like how do you think of it?
Yeah, I tend to think of it as a 70-20-10 rule. So 70% should be focused on, look, you got to sell at the end of the day, right? As your podcast suggests, it's all about pipeline and revenue. So,
Yeah.
and I think you want to always take 10% of your mental capacity, your funding, and always like push the limits to understanding and bringing things that are back new into the fold. And then the 20% is how do you optimize? How do you bring that in make it become part of the base. And hopefully that's a higher, base than you started with. So I think it's always learning, especially nowadays with so much technology, so many ideas coming from both AI and from people and the combination of the two. I think it's super critical to always be pushing the envelope and have that part of the mindset versus
Mhm.
always just optimizing something.
Yeah. So it's 70% net new, like calculated creative swings, 20% optimizations and iterations. Is that right?
No, 70% on the foundation, the things that
Okay.
every day's job of
Got it.
writing pipeline, driving awareness, 70% of your total resources, and then 20% of like, or actually then it's the 10% that you're always innovating. And then it's not just enough to innovate for the sake of innovation. You always want to start to bring that back into the core. And that does take some time and some effort to make sure the things that you've learned, you start to optimize and really understand the impact to
Yeah.
you do.
Hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally, no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours, even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision. One thing that I've been struggling with, especially in B2B spaces where the selling cycle is long.
Yeah.
So, like, let's say that you have a net new idea, a calculated creative idea that you have high degree of conviction in. You put it out into market, um, and then immediately you're starting to get a lot of data signals back. None of them are actually necessarily closed won deals, but you're getting other signals and hints. Um, at what point do you kind of declare it a winner or a loser? Like, at what point is it like, hey, let's definitely keep this going versus like, hey, let's definitely scrap this? I'm really
That's
curious about how you think of it.
That's always the challenge, right? Everyone's looking for the quick win, and once you see one number spike, you're like, "Let's go." And
Yeah.
and that's where the discipline of having that percentage of not bringing something too early into the fold. I've seen this before, especially at Salesforce. You can see it uh, at my time there because there's so much traffic. But just because you see engagement, just because you see conversion doesn't mean it actually gets to closed won. So it's keeping a mind on both, which
Yeah.
is strategic aspect. I've seen plenty of pages get lots of action as far as click through rates and time on page, but at the end they never converted. So which is just another opportunity to understand. Look, was is it the messaging? Is it the brand that's not resonating, or are you just attracting the wrong traffic?
Yeah. Right. It could very well be a targeting thing.
Yeah.
And targeting is so tough nowadays, like with the algorithms, because like you know, you could run two different ads to the same audience and actually end up in different pockets of those audiences based on like what the characteristics of the response, the responders are. So it can definitely get very challenging. We have
Yeah.
a client in the B2C space with a shorter selling cycle, and their CMO is adamant about like, test everything fully with at least, like if their target cost per deal is $1, he's like, we need to spend at least $5 on this to really see it through. But then at the same time, we're held accountable like on a month to month basis for the performance. So like when we put something new out there, sometimes we'll have really high conviction, but just the cost per lead or like the earlier funnel metrics are not good. So our media buyers are like, turn it off, turn it off. but their CMO is pretty adamant, and which is admirable. And he's like, let it play out, let it run.
Yeah, it's funny. I see this a lot where either you jump too early and take something, that this is the new norm, and sometimes it's about just having patience. And we all know that brand takes effort over time too, right? For something
Yeah,
to really stick. So even though it might be different, it's hard to get the signal from the noise sometimes, and that's where the patience and hopefully experience starts to kick in.
yeah. So, give our listeners some advice. Imagine that CMO or that VP marketing that instead of the 70-20-10 that you've recommended is more like 98-2, right? Like they're just mired in the day-to-day activity and they could really use a big swing or something calculated creative. Like what advice would you give them? Like what is there anything they could do like next month, for instance?
Yeah, I think it's really, coming into any new position as I just have, it's always about trying to find a little bit of space, right? Everyone is busy every day, and I think it's really critical to to find and work that with the executives to manage expectations. That is the job of the CMO, to make sure that there's space and have a compelling reason why you need to make a bolder move and what it takes to do that. And I think it goes back to just listening and understanding the needs of the business and articulating why you need space, money, people, resources to take a bigger swing, and what are the benefits on the other side of that. So
Yeah.
that's the job, I think.
Yeah. No, I really like that. The job of the CMO is to create space.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough job, as you know, every market
Yeah.
under a tremendous amount of pressure. But
Yeah.
I look at my position is, if you bring a marketer in, you have to let them be a marketer. And if you want change, like what is the definition of madness? Is to do things the same and expect a different outcome.
Yeah. No, that's really good. And I think, being a marketer myself and being very close to certain clients, it is certainly a different mindset. It's a very different mindset to take a step back and to think outside the box and to think about, right hooks when you're really accustomed to a lot of jabbing. Um, so I'm inspired right now. I'm sure many of our listeners are inspired. I've got one last question for you on the calculated creativity angle, but then I want to hear about Ignite a little bit.
Sure.
Um, but what are some examples of calculated creativity, like either from your own experience or just things that you've seen out in the wild from other brands that you're like, wow, that's a real zig when others are zagging, or
Yeah.
yeah,
I I have a couple of, obviously, Salesforce being the prime one. It's sort of born to be different in a lot of ways. There's times to follow and there's times to lead. And learning from Mark and the team back when I was at Salesforce, it was like, how do we be different? How do we break out of the norm? Again, that pattern, and how do you break the pattern?
yeah,
Well, just from the time that I was at, helping with Dreamforce, how do we create moments that are different?
yeah,
To the park idea on 4th Street, we close it down and create a park and not just another pavilion with a lot of vendors, right?
yeah,
How do you take over a city and make it more like an amusement park rather than a B2B, conference? So
yeah,
there's lots of examples around those type of experiences, so that you think about it end to end, and finding these smaller moments and bigger moments that differentiate you. I think it's really important to always ask, the why question. Why are we doing this? How can we be different? What do we want the outcomes to be? And so for me, that again, that's knowing where you want to end up and giving yourself opportunity to get there in a few different ways than what may be obvious.
yeah. No, that's a really good point. And I had Brian Law on the show not too long ago, the CMO of Zoom Info, and his topic or his secret was to think less about differentiation and more about distinctiveness. So, like to your point of just simply being different and being different in a memorable way, I think goes a long way. And uh, we were talking together because that kind of makes a marketer's job easier in some respects. Like if you don't have to have 98 different audience segments and like 98 slightly different messages for each, and you could just have like one big, bold, and distinct and differentiated view of the world. I think that that can be a really powerful arsenal.
Yeah, I agree. That's the front door of your business and it attracts people in, right? And
Yeah,
for B2B specifically, it has to be really tied into your product and what you stand for, right? At the end of the day, I always say this at almost every position I've been in. It's not my job to create messaging. My job is to reveal what's awesome, that's already awesome about the culture and the company and highlight that in a authentic, distinct way.
yeah, brilliant. I love that. Cool. Well, thank you so much for that, Ryan. I know that a lot of people listening to this are inspired to get out there to motivate their own teams to start thinking about some really creative big swings that are also backed by data, and then to create the space with their executive leadership team to allow for that kind of experimentation and learning. I think that's super powerful,
Thank you. I appreciate
especially
it.
for right now. I mean,
Yeah.
because everyone's in like do more with less, the year of efficiency kind of thing. So I think it's an especially timely message right now.
Yeah, it's really it's a difficult environment. Like, I think everyone's looking for the pennies in the couch to go do something, and it's where your data is super critical, and understanding the business is really important as a marketer, and not just being someone who spends money and looks at just the brand and and the reputation of a company, but really on how that drives the bottom line. And it's being able to be versed in both the business
Yeah.
aspect, but the awareness aspect and brand as well.
Yeah. And, that could be the topic of a whole nother pod, the balancing of those 2 things. Because like, I come from a very much, like, performance-focused, direct response is my background, and I used to sort of snub my nose a little bit at brand and awareness type of things, but, over the years, I've recognized the power of it in many ways. Um, and there's a specific story that comes to mind where we were working with a regional window company, and their goal was to expand into net new markets. So we were running their paid search, and we tried to activate a net new market, and the metrics were just not good at all compared to our home market. Like cost per lead was nearly double, cost per sale was unacceptable range. So we got the idea basically to start with some of the more traditional awareness things that they were doing, which in their case was like radio and print and things like that, for a few months before entering the new markets in the paid search capacity. And it was night and day. Like that level of awareness was just literally night and day difference. That was years ago, but I think now, especially with the targeting capabilities available and for like niche B2B companies, like it's you can create that awareness within your small subset of buyers for a lot less expensively, you know?
Yeah, obviously, it's just the amount of segmentation and personalization is just incredibly, surgical now compared to what it was in the past. But I love your example and the fact that, just because there's something new doesn't mean that it's going to work, right? And
Yeah.
it's always be open to different tactics. The obvious may just be the obvious, right? And not to overcomplicate something.
Yeah. I love that message too. You got a lot of good content, man. I could foresee multiple different spin-off episodes from here.
Yeah, I've been at this for a while.
Yeah, I can tell. Cool. So let's talk about Ignite. I have become familiarized with it just from prepping for this, but for folks that may not be familiar, what are you guys all about, or what do you do?
The tagline is the intelligent data and knowledge platform for collaboration. But if I had to unpack it and give you sort of an elevator pitch, it's solving like the most obvious problem, right? Which is there's only going to be more content in the world. Like look at this
Yeah.
podcast, look at from both a person perspective, but from obviously AI generating tons and tons of content. And sort of the basic need there is going to be the storage and permissions and how do I make sense of all of this information, right? So obviously the storage and collaboration around that content's important, but I think what that really opens up is how do I accelerate all the information of the knowledge center of every company and put it at the fingertips of every employee so that they can innovate faster and be more agile, but they can also push that to the customers of the company. So
Mm,
Ignite is really about the exchanging and accelerating of innovation and ideas for companies to really think about the most important data, which is the data that your teams are working on every day and collaborating with every day.
yeah. Interesting. So would you describe it sort of in like the knowledge management category?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's funny. We've come from this world where text, Slack are all really important, like status updates. But at the end of the day, what we really want to do is have a lot of documents and share ideas, and I think that's having that all consolidated, having that all in one place, and getting everyone up to speed and is really critical. But obviously, the power of a more practical AI of being able to summarize those documents and also add to the conversation is is what's really interesting about Ignite. And I think just the future. It's like, how do I get more productivity? It's not like some faraway land of AI. It's like we have all the information, we have all the context. We just need a little bit of machine learning and AI to help bring the important things to the surface.
very cool. Very cool. Well, I'm curious, because a person like you, like in terms of your skills and experience and your resume, you could go work anywhere. What was it about Ignite that really drew you in, or that attracted you the most?
I love companies this size with this type of opportunity, right? So
Yeah,
of an amazing product, and I saw opportunity for a huge impact, right? They that I know a lot of companies tend to say this. It's a like the best kept secret in technology, and
yeah,
it's at the right stage, right sort of point of inflection for a marketer like myself to have a huge impact. And that's what I love to do is to see the partnership between marketing and a great product and see how far that can go.
I love that. Yeah, so right size, right time, great product. Um, it's a marketer's dream. It sounds like.
Yeah, those opportunities are hard to come by, and I think it's also like every marketer has their certain situation they love to come into, and
Mhm.
I like to come in when some of the foundation's already there and it's ready for a little push, and marketing can be that push to move forward.
Yeah, 100%. So, I know you're very new there still. I'm curious about what's your approach when you enter a new company? Like, do you or what has been your focus at Ignite so far?
Just to get to know the people
Yeah,
and to get to know the data. I know that seems obvious, but whenever you're coming into a new marketing team, I think it's really critical to understand the skills and that you have. And then I think it's really important to understand how they're being leveraged and what's important to the business. And I sort of have that idea of like, do no harm when you first join, right? You don't want to
yeah,
jerk the wheel and cause like, you know, marketers have a lot of responsibility. So I don't want to do damage my first 3 weeks. So I'm doing a lot of listening right now.
that's good. That's smart. That's a good approach. Um, So, what's really driving revenue for you guys now? Like, what are your either your top channels or your top go-to-market motions? Like, is it mostly events? Is that a lot of LinkedIn?
It's got a pretty good mix of I call it the typical pipeline horses, right? So you have marketing sourced, you have sales, outbound, both AE and BDR, and then you have channel. So it's got a good mix of all three of those. I think, obviously marketing with a PLG type of company tends to weigh a little bit heavier towards, marketing. So everything looks like that's what it looks like, right?
Yeah,
It seems obvious again, but that's what I'm finding so far a month in.
I got you. And so so you're mostly a PLG, um, like with the free trial to then
Yeah, get
to
into
upsell motion.
the product, and I think you're going to see the value of the platform and people having all that content within our platform. It's a natural motion for every company this size to really focus on mid market. Um,
Yeah,
and that's where we see the value for specific verticals like AEC, FinServe, and health services.
yeah,
Our 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 platform is really helpful for those industries, and as we start to tailor, it's always the more specificity you have in your offering, the better engagement and better conversion. And so you're going to see us continue to look at how we can supercharge verticals
mhm.
with our solution.
That sounds fun. PLG is always fun because it's like, in a more sales-led environment, the amount of data that you get after that first conversion is pretty sparse, right? But PLG is fun because it's just like a huge amount of data flowing in for those folks that have already started that free trial. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah, I really love the idea of the other, obviously this, but maybe some of the listeners don't, is I think is really critical, especially in a B2B world. The line between product and marketing is super thin.
Yeah.
And you can see clear signals within a product for adoption or usage. It's probably what you want to start to highlight in your marketing materials, right?
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And AI is really interesting for a product like yours because like, we have built, AI-driven chatbots that are trained on, the customer's internal documentation so that they can answer questions on the fly. Um, so it seems like it could be a natural fit, in terms of a product offering for you guys, but are you, how do you find you guys are using AI, like, within the product?
Yeah, very similar. Like at this point, we're looking at the context of all your documents
Mhm.
in a walled garden, obviously.
Yeah.
So that's where the security, and I think the number one thing is to make sure that the content's stored and secure, and then
Mhm.
it's contextual within those conversations. So like giving the right permissions to the right people and making
Mm,
sure the things that aren't for everyone are secure as well. And then what we're seeing is the ability to search basically all the specific content for the specific role is super critical in delivering, the right insights. That's one of the things about AI right now is the hallucination, right? Especially when you expose it to larger LLMs, and making sure that you're giving the right answers to the right person. And
yeah.
that's the fun part of the data and the content that is stored within Ignite.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So it's like new salesperson on the job has a question, some detailed question about some specific product. They can basically just go search and be like, "Hey, what's this answer?" and get that info curated right back to them, more or
It's fun.
less.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things that not only can they get that to them, but it'll summarize. It'll actually show the origination of where that answer came from too. I think you
Interesting.
know the context and the power of the platform is really interesting that way. And it's I think we're still at the early ages or early stages of what we can do. But again, like we want it to be practical. I think we're in this sort of valley of disillusionment of AI, and I think especially CIOs and companies want to be very careful, and
Yeah.
that's our guiding principle for what we do.
Yeah. And so I guess it would make sense why some of the spaces that you mentioned that you like to play in, like FinServe, health, those are some of the higher reg spaces where, like, you know, most of the clients that I speak with are very bullish on AI. They want to use it as much as possible. Yesterday, I was meeting, had a face-to-face meeting actually, which was nice, with a large credit union here locally. They're not allowed to use AI. It's literally like if somebody even tries to attempt to access it, like it throws off red flags and cybersecurity and it like shuts down their machine, like crazy style of, or not resistance, but to your point, they're just trying to keep it secure because there are certainly some real risks, especially in higher reg environments.
Yeah, that's the sort of opposing forces, right? You have really critical information that you want people to share and collaborate on and innovate with, but it's like how fast can you get it? How secure is it? And how do you leverage intelligence on top of it, right? Those are three really hard things to solve, and I think we're Ignite's at an interesting intersection of all three of those, right? And it's been built sort of purpose built for those use cases. But when I talk to CIOs at cabs and things like that, there's a lot of optimism, but at the end of the day, you want to know how much confidence do you have in that data, and that's where I think our approach of having it contextual within your own walled garden of your content is a good safety valve so that you understand the context and you have control over it, right?
Yeah.
And and then you can like methodically start to include different AI or models against it, but you can always remediate to a point where you feel safe. And I think that's going to be the interesting future of AI, right? How do you have confidence? You eliminate hallucination, and how do you have context to your industry, to your problems?
Yeah. 100%. I follow. Well, look, it sounds like you guys have something great going. The website looks awesome. The product itself sounds like it's an amazing solution. The team sounds strong. I know that you're fairly new there, but I'm curious, what major challenges do you foresee like throughout the rest of the year and into next year?
Yeah, I think it's the challenge of every marketer. How do I grow the business responsibly, right? I think getting understanding command and control over pipeline and conversion and linearity. So no secrets there, but I it's always the most important job. And I tend to simplify marketing as either you have a traffic problem or a conversion problem, and everything's under one of those two things.
That I thought I invented that saying. That's like
Oh, you
my
said it too?
favorite saying. I love that saying.
Great
Oh
minds
my,
think alike.
that is awesome. He just said you either have a traffic problem or a conversion problem.
Yeah.
Um,
And everything's sort of a subset of that, right? Whether your awareness or, whether it's paid search or yeah, everything you're doing is to drive more awareness, or you have the wrong traffic, or you have the wrong message or a wrong product at the conversion points. And so, you know, I think that's always like everything's moving so fast. I think it's always keeping your eye on those things.
wow. Ryan, we are officially blood brothers now.
That's what I'm here.
Bonded. No, I love that, man. Cool. So, I know you're relatively new there, but let's talk about some of the things on the horizon. And I'll tell you, let's just geek out a little bit, basically, and like you tell me about some of the stuff you're excited about. I'll tell you about some of the stuff I'm excited about.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Um, I'll start. I'll tell you about something I'm obsessed with. So there's this tool called rb2b.com. R like retention, and then B2B. What I like about it is that unlike a Sixth Sense or a demand base or something, it shows you not only the companies that are visiting your site in real time, but the actual people. So it will actually
Wow.
like map back to their LinkedIn profile. Um, and it can be deployed in a couple different ways. One way you can have it pushed to CRM that there's a fee associated with it, but then you can have it pushed to Slack. Like you can have a Slack channel created, pushed to Slack, give whoever you want access to it. But we started using that just a few weeks ago and have been obsessed with it. Like and we have salespeople in there, marketing people, ops people, and a lot of the things that you see are not relevant, but like every once in a while, a really good one comes through, and you can basically like coordinate outreach efforts right there on the fly. Very cool. I would check it out. Any B2B, I think would love that.
Cool. I'll definitely check it out. Uh, let's see. Do you get sponsorship dollars if I mention like platforms? Uh,
Maybe. Yeah.
so
No, probably not though.
we'll see. Maybe we'll test it right now.
Yeah.
There, I'm sure you've heard of it, but I'm pretty obsessed with HeyGen. Have you heard of that?
Ooh, I love HeyGen too. Yes.
Yeah, I'm just like stunned on what it
For
does right now.
creating avatars and like voice clones.
It's crazy.
Are you
It's
guys international?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Are you international? Like, do you do
We're
business in EMEA?
we've just started like establishing footprints in EMEA, but I've toyed with it and started to use it at LM Logic Monitor before I moved over, and it was just kind of mind blowing on the language. I shared it just with my family, and they were blown away at the different languages you could populate. It's
Yeah.
I- I'm I'm curious to see what it looks like in a year,
Oh my goodness.
right?
It's yeah, it's crazy. Um, yeah, we have a client that we do run ads for in like 12 different countries. And it was previously a huge endeavor to, get things translated from one to the other, but then also to find people like, on camera talent to do those types of things was incredibly difficult. Um, we don't use HeyGen anymore. We found a different one that our CTO likes better for some reason, but it does a lot of that same. I can find the name of it.
Yeah,
Um, but it basically the translations, are very good. Like, we still send them to the translations team, but they come back with fewer revisions than what is typical. But the lip syncing and, like, the voice overdub and the tone and the speed of the voice, it's just amazing.
we're uh, you know, I I kind of had a weird moment with platforms like that. I think expectations from consumers of is also changing, right? I care less and less about having a real person or a real voice with the content I'm consuming because I'm consuming so many different types of content over different channels, and so I'll be interested to see. I mean, it's fraught with danger, obviously,
Yeah.
but I'm really interested to see how, like, generationally, how people consume information like that and how it just changes over time. Like, do you care if it's an avatar anymore? Are we finally over that, like, Valley of the Doll, or like that human aspect of getting info?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. And, so yes, fraught with potential danger for bad actors, and I could tell you a story about that. But there's many marketers who wish that their CEO would create more content, right? Like, we want our CEOs to be active on LinkedIn. Like, that would be a huge unlock in most cases because they're going to get the most reach in most cases. Of course, CEOs are busy. So, like, we could write the content for them, right? And that's what a lot of people now do. Or maybe they could have an avatar now,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
I
where you,
definitely think that's a thing
yeah,
because I mean the not so secret is obviously a lot of CEOs have ghostwriters, right?
yeah.
It's like, how do you keep up? And that's the scaling of just a CEO, one of the most important. the most important in any company, and how do you scale that effect? So I definitely think that's the future.
Yeah. By the way, my producer just sent put this note in front of me. Rask AI, RASK.ai is the one that we use now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm always how do you find time to continue to let me turn the tables. How do you find time to always look at different platforms, different AI tools? I'm curious on how you do it. I have to
Um,
time on like Fridays where I spend a few hours just looking at different things, but
so a couple ways. Twitter, LinkedIn, like I curate the people like who I'm following, and so I can log into there at any given time and find some of that new cool stuff. Um, but I run an agency, right? And so we have 80 people. So I've got eyes and ears all over. So we have these what we call SME groups, which is subject matter expertise. So like all the search people have this Slack channel where they share the cool stuff, all the social people, all the data and analytics people.
wow.
So I've got basically many eyes and ears out there and then just curated feeds. And I spend a little bit of time every day just looking around and stuff. Plus, I like it, like I'm drawn to it. Like it's not a chore for me.
I love it too. That's part of my 7-20-10 rule, right? That 10% of always trying to adopt new platforms and see what's new out there, and then how do you like integrate it back into your stack?
Yeah. No, I love it. I absolutely love it. Something else I've been really hot on lately is UGC style video. So, and it's very prolific in the B2C spaces. And this is the idea of basically like an iPhone recorded, like low fidelity, but generally scripted and well acted video. There's a framework where like the first 2 or 3 seconds should be the hook, then it will be the body, and then the last bit will be the CTA. And there's like a modular methodology that we'll use to create them where it's like one body, three different hooks, three different CTAs, and we'll just kind of mix and mash and test them. But I think that will be coming to B2B soon, that style. It's been in B2C for a long time. It's like almost to a point where it's kind of played out.
Yeah,
Um, but B2B is historically slower. But I don't see any reason that that type of ad, especially maybe a little bit longer, maybe like a 2 or 3 um, minute sort of UGC style, but also maybe like a mini demo. It's just like I think that ad format is coming to B2B.
I think I think it's here. It's funny. Earlier days in my career, I was more at agencies and more consumer brands, and I think it was that time between B2B and B2C behaviors is continue to thin, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it's prosumer. It's like you don't have like this enterprise buyer and there's no line between where that person consumes information now, right?
Yeah.
It may be time of day or preference on channel, but I think that's a pretty thin line now.
Yeah. I would agree. Have you seen any B2B ads like that?
I've seen a few on TikTok.
Yeah, on TikTok for sure.
Yeah, I see all like they're mostly consumer, but the entertainment factor I think is the hardest one to find, right? Without sort of tipping the line of corny. Is that a term?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Without it being just cringe. So for me, that's the hardest balance from a B2B to get into those type of formats. How do you make it feel not forced?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it comes down a lot to the script. It's really around the script and the actor
Yeah.
and the on-camera talent or the
Yeah.
avatar. I was
No,
on TikTok the other day. This is so I don't spend much time on TikTok intentionally because I would get addicted to it in a second and, just stay up until 2 a.m. scrolling through my TikTok. But we do run quite a bit of ads on it. So I spend a lot of time like in they have this creative center which is like an ad library, and theirs is actually really good. Like you can search and filter by in more ways than you can on like Google or Facebook's ad library.
Oh, cool.
Um, and there's a lot of good content like for creative inspiration. Any marketer would do well to just jump in there. But there's this little chat bot that popped up along the side and was like, "What can I help you with?" And it was and one of the options was create a UGC video. So I selected right inside that chat bot. It's like, answer these 3 questions about your brand and we'll make the script. So I do it, makes a script, gives me a few different variations, tells me to choose one. So I choose one and it's like, great. Now let's choose an avatar. So this is all happening within the chat. So I'm like, okay, cool. Choose an avatar. Great. Takes a couple minutes to load. Then boom, gives me this video with that avatar saying that script. And it was like, you could kind of tell it was AI, but it was not bad. Like there was definitely some mannerisms and some expressions going on in there that were very human-esque. And with a white background, and it's just like download the file and you can do whatever you want with it. Crazy.
That is crazy. And that was my earlier point. I'm wondering, like, do we care as much anymore? If it's a slightly you have a slight jitter in the background or whatever, and it I like that example just because it's how AI and technology works, right? It still takes people to relate to people and people to make decisions, right? Of of what's quality, what really represents you. That's a great and how technology kind of enables that. It's just we're sort of living in this interesting era of limitless creativity that's curated by people.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Well, Ryan, this has been amazing. I've learned things. I've been inspired to take bigger swings and to use that 70-20-10 rule to both drive pipeline, but then also have some calculated creativity in the mix. I've really enjoyed it. I'm sure that all the listeners have as well. So thank you for coming on, man.
Thank you. I've learned a ton too. Always enjoy talking a little shop and can never you always have to have that learning mentality. That mentality.
100%. Cool. Well, I know you're a busy man. Let's get you out of here on time. There's just one last thing we got to do, which is the lightning round.
Sounds good.
All right.
Let's go.
Are you ready? Here we go. Question number 1. If you were to start a side hustle, what side hustle would that be?
DJ.
DJ. Nice. All right. I certainly wouldn't have guessed that, but I
Yeah,
could see it. Nice. All right. Question number 2 is top 3 books, authors, influencers, podcasts, whatever you like that have made an impact in your career.
sure. I tend to just look at books I'm interested in. So the last three audiobooks I listen to are Algorithms to Live By, uh,
Ooh, that sounds awesome.
a classic made to stick, and The Advantage.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, Made to Stick I'm familiar with, but I'll have to check out the other 2. We'll
Yeah,
include them in the show notes too.
right on.
Um, and then question number 3 is how do you avoid burnout and how do you help your team also to avoid it?
I listen a lot. I listen to my family. I listen to the team, and I try to understand where they're at. So I think listening's an underrated tool. I think a lot of marketers like to talk, including myself, but listening's important to understand where your team is at, where your life's at.
Yeah, that's really good. That's awesome. Cool. Well, Ryan, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed this. Folks listening, if you have enjoyed this, please drop us a like or a 5-star review wherever you get your pods or share this with a friend. Ryan, for folks that would like to learn more about you or Ignite, where would you direct them?
I direct them to ignite.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn.
Perfect. All right. Well, stick around just 1 second. We will close up, Ryan. But for everybody else, that was another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO, and we will see you next time. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours, even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.